An entitled jerk ruins me and my friend's night by being very smug and obnoxious towards me and my friends. So we decided to get some petty revenge by getting this guy pulled over while he was driving home after we reported him for driving under the influence. Here's what happened. So this story takes place about 20 years ago. In the mid-2000s, my friends and I would frequent a small billiards place in a neighboring town where you could rent a table by the hour or play per game. We would play a few games, watch whatever sports were on TV, and have some casual conversations. There were no problems and no drama until about 3 months of us visiting this place. Some guy shows up and takes our spot at the billiards table, and this is no big deal. We were all chatting anyways. 20 minutes later, my friend lets him know we want to play the next game, and this jerk is super dismissive. Needless to say, we didn't get in during the next game, so I politely let him know that we wanted to play the next one, and another lady chimed in that she wanted the next game after us. Well, this entitled jerk just blatantly ignored me and the other woman. Some more time goes by, and this guy leaves the table, and that's when we see our chance to get in. We put the quarters in and the balls are all dispensed. That is, except for the green number 6 ball. And that's when we realized that this guy took it with him to the bathroom. At this point, it was ridiculous, and we notified the manager. The manager noted that it was 12:30, and they were going to be calling last call and closing, so he didn't want to make a scene by kicking him out. So instead, he just gets us another ball so that we can play. This entitled jerk then comes out of the bathroom, and he knows that we realize exactly what he did. He smirks and proceeds to the patio to have a smoke, bringing along his beer and the green billiard ball. The guy then comes back in and tossed the ball as he was holding onto the table, hitting a few of the balls on the table and messing up our game. He then goes up to the bar just in time for last call. Well, one of the friends I was with suggested that we follow him home and each call the highway patrol to report a suspected drunk driver. And you know what? 3 out of the 4 of us agreed. So when he leaves, we used our phones to coordinate several calls to the police. We provided details like a license plate, the vehicle make and model, and the color, and we mentioned the car nearly hit another vehicle, was swerving between lanes and driving erratically. And this was all under a 15-minute plan too, by the way. We had no idea where the guy lived, but we suspected it was close, as he was visiting a neighborhood place, so our time was very limited. The one guy who didn't notify the police tailed this jerk and called us excited when a police officer pulled between him and the guy and turned in his lights to pull him over. The police blotter that week included an arrest of a guy who was pulled over after multiple calls of erratic driving. He wasn't arrested for DWI, but instead for driving on a suspended license. And honestly, with all things considered, we're glad we did this because this guy absolutely deserved it. Yeah, that guy was being a massive jerk. He took your spot at the billiards table literally for no reason, and then he takes the number 6 ball with him to the bathroom, so you guys can't have any kind of game of your own. Like, that's not only super toxic, but it's also obnoxious. And what's with the manager not kicking this guy out and making an example of him? It's pretty clear this guy was trying to cause problems, and the manager's like, oh, we're close to last call, I can't do that yet. Like, that manager was a coward, and he absolutely could have sorted this out. So yeah, good for these people for getting this guy in trouble, because while yes, he absolutely was a jerk at that bar, he was also definitely driving while having a few drinks. And that, in my opinion, is more than enough reason for this guy to find himself in some hot water. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled old jerk demands that we serve him a steak the exact way that he demands it and treats me and my staff like garbage, as he refuses to listen to anything I had to say. Here's what happened. Okay, so for a bit of background, I'm a chef for a grocery store chain which runs seasonal food events, hot bars, salad bars, and a bakery. And this is in a coastal town riddled with retirees and just straight up stereotypical old people with nothing to do. It's just a boring town with money. And though I'm from a much more diverse city with culture and background, I do fit in with my job and I'm well regarded by my peers. People know who I am. They like my food, and they generally show respect for the work that the boys and I do. However, some of these old entitled jerks simply can never be satisfied. Now, our flagship event is our prime rib dinner deal that costs $17.99, and it is an 8 to 10 ounce cut of meat. This is a medium rare steak that comes with sides. And you know what? As a chef, I think it's an absolute steal, especially with the work I do to get it to taste great and the manual labor from multiple people just to make it to the customer's plate. A lot of the old people around this area approach the station and just spew out that they want their steak rare. And this is really annoying for quite a few reasons. For starters, I work in retail, so we're looked down upon, so pleasantries such as, hey, may I please have a rare steak, just isn't something that these old entitled jerks think that they need to give to somebody in front of them. Secondly, we we sell our roast beef medium rare, and we do that for taste and safety reasons. You'll also often see perfect steaks with a gray overlay due to the heat lamp, so we try to face them away or carve and serve for freshness. And sometimes we don't even have to do that. A lot of people don't know anything about food in general, so what they see is not what they think they will get, and a proper heat lamp can't cook a steak to a high temperature when the steak doesn't spend too much time under it. But if you cut into one of them, you will still see that it's pink more often than not. Now, there's 2 people at the carving station when it's really busy, but otherwise the other person is working in the back. So my partner was carving and I was making plates. And for reference, he often lets me deal with unruly jerks because I can be fake nice and tell him to go kick some rocks. But of course with nicer words and with a smile. I ask down the line and take a head count for orders just to make sure we have enough plates and clear the line quickly. That is until the entitled jerk of this story steps up. This guy looks at me and says,
"I want the rarest one that you've got."
I look at him and I say, "We'll do what we can, my friend." And then I continue to try and do my head count. This guy then jumps in again and says to me,
"Did you hear what I said, young man?"
So I look at him and I say, "You'll get what is in front of you or you can loop back around later. Plus, we just took out a fresh slab out of the hot box." He then says to me,
"I'm paying for it, so I better get 'em."
But I look at him and I said, "Listen, bro, you haven't paid for anything. And if you keep arguing with the chef, please feel free to leave my station." He then looks at me and says,
"What did you say?"
And he's obviously playing pretend to act like he can't hear, when even the people behind him absolutely heard me loud and clear. So I explained to him what was going on. I said to him, "We sell medium rare steaks. In fact, I'm gonna make this clear for the kids in the back too." And that's when I shouted out so everybody could hear. I said, "This is not a restaurant, so if you argue with the chefs, you get no beef." And I swear to God, a guy in the background says, "Heard, chef." This old entitled jerk walks towards the table and says to me,
"I don't like you, man."
But my coworker says, "But you love his meat, and I'm sure you'll come back for it." But I responded by saying, "No need for that, chef, but thank you. Now give this man his rare steak." And this was all just too perfect. Now this was a week ago, and we do have an event in a few hours, so I really hope to see this entitled jerk try to pull this once again. I spoke to the head chef, and she gave me the go-ahead to take absolutely no prisoners. Yeah, there is nothing worse than some entitled jerk trying to bark orders at you, and then acts all indignant and entitled when they don't get their way like right then and there. So good for you for standing up for yourself and not dealing with this guy's garbage, because his attitude was weird from the get-go, and if he was just a little bit more polite, I'm sure this could have been a normal interaction, instead of this entitled tantrum that this guy clearly exhibited. My parents have suddenly turned on my boyfriend and have collectively decided that they don't like him. And now, after encountering their awful attitude, as well as their terrible excuses as to why they don't like him, I'm now left wondering if I need to make some kind of boundaries between them and my personal life, because right now I'm so frustrated, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So for a bit of backstory, my boyfriend and I have been together for 6 years. 4 of those years, we have lived together, gotten a dog, and had various other milestones in our lives. We have both been through a ton, seeing as though we are still in our 20s, and we've both been growing and changing. However, we've never wavered, and although we've had some tough conversations in the moment, we both know we want to be together indefinitely, and we see a future regardless of how wonky our timeline may be. Now, my boyfriend is extremely quiet and is socially awkward. He comes from a very tight-knit family. He's very kind and soft-spoken and very gentle. He doesn't say much, but when he does, it's some ridiculous joke, and he's always trying to make people laugh if he can. My parents have always liked him, or at least painted the picture that they did. My dad is very rigid, and both of them combined aren't easy to take in large quantities. They often have a lot to say about what other people are doing, but in turn don't take constructive criticism about themselves very well. Anyways, they've recently bought a vacation home and opened it up to myself and my siblings for a week. My sister and I brought our significant others, and the week went by pretty okay for the first few days. But then, halfway through the week, their demeanor towards my boyfriend changed. My dad got exceptionally snippy with him, and my mom would not acknowledge him unless absolutely necessary. As I was leaving, he went to get the car, and my mom high-fives me and says, "Oh, he's gone, you can stay." And I literally just wanted to run. I don't know why that statement bothered me so much, but it ripped me right to my core. I let it go for a while, but then by the time we left, I was pretty frustrated. Everything in my eyes had gone totally fine, and I couldn't understand what their issue was. Finally, when we got back, I let a few days pass, and over the phone, I brought it up to my mom. I said to her, "Do you guys still like my boyfriend?" She says to me, "Well, there are some things we are seeing that we absolutely do not like." Now, mind you, I'm 26 years old, and I've been living on my own since I was 21, so to be addressed that way was already a little rough. She then goes on to say, "We could discuss it in person the next time I see you." And I said to her, no, we can discuss it soon. I'll FaceTime you on my lunch break and we can talk. Well, basically, she spent an hour telling me how she doesn't feel he wants to be a part of the family, all because of how quiet he is. Apparently, because my dad can't connect with him, he doesn't see him fit. They're also pissed off that we aren't married yet, which I can understand, but in my eyes, it's our choice and none of their business. We've both agreed that we just want to iron out the details before we put marriage on the table, but they feel like they're losing me and that I'm integrating myself into his family too much, which I also just cannot grasp. If my plan is to marry him, why wouldn't I want to do that? I love his family. They're honestly so peaceful and easy to be around, and I feel like they're jealous of that. She also spent another hour talking garbage about his family, and that was my least favorite part of the conversation. There was a lot of, are you happy? We just want you to be happy. Are you sure you're happy? And you know what? I'm actually the happiest I've ever been, and I feel like they almost want me to say no. They then got my sister involved as well, and I guess they wanted her opinion on everything. Her boyfriend is super bubbly and outgoing and supposedly can do no wrong, and my parents absolutely love him. All in all, I have no clue how to proceed. I told her I was extremely happy in my relationship and that he and I are very pleased with our timeline, and we feel we are going at our own pace. Well, ever since that conversation, there's been no mention of my boyfriend. We talk daily on the phone, and not once has she asked about him or how he's doing. Now, he knows that something is up, but I don't think he knows the severity of it. He is such a good, sweet person, and it breaks my heart that they are now punishing him for no reason. This kid put so much thought into everything with my parents. He actually built my dad an axe throwing board for Christmas last year and spent like $500 total on supplies. He really does mean well, he's just a little bit awkward. I am now wanting to create boundaries with them and not allow them access to that part of my life because they have so much judgment to cast. Has anyone ever dealt with something like this before? Does it ever get better? My therapist said that I should tell them that how they behaved towards him on vacation was unacceptable, but I'm scared it will blow up and make the situation worse. What should I do? I think first of all, you need to understand that your parents do not dictate your relationship in the slightest. You know exactly what you have with your boyfriend, and your parents have no say in who you can and cannot spend time with. But also on that note, I think your therapist might be onto something. If I was in your shoes, I would be telling my parents right away that the way they treated him was inappropriate and that will not happen again. It also doesn't really seem like you defended your boyfriend in the slightest when your mom was dragging him and his family through the dirt. Like they don't have a legitimate reason not to like him. It only seems like they don't like him all because your boyfriend is like kind of shy and introverted. But if that's literally the only basis they're going off of, then they're the ones with the problem and not you. So truly, in my opinion, I think it's time to set some boundaries and say that enough is enough, because the way they're treating your boyfriend is super inappropriate and he does not deserve this kind of treatment in the slightest. I found out that my husband has been lying to his coworkers by telling them that I'm his sister and not his wife. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my husband, we'll call him Josh for the sake of the story, has been with me for 6 years and we've been married for 4 and we don't have any kids. We have a healthy relationship and we communicate a lot. We're also both pretty easygoing and I really love him a lot. He started working at a large accounting firm about 3 years ago, and from what he tells me, he loves it there. He's made a lot of friends through his job and he goes out with them for drinks and social events quite often, and I've been totally okay with that. I am quite introverted, so I've never been interested in meeting his colleagues or his work friends. And you know what? I haven't asked to either. I've got my own circle of friends and I'm fine with us having separate friend groups. After what happened yesterday, it's only just occurred to me that he has never actually asked me if I'd like to meet any of them or go to one of his work events, so I guess that will be important for context later on. Anyways, I'll start with what happened a few months ago that I had brushed off until now. I was at a bar with some friends for a couple of Friday after work drinks, and a guy approached me who was there with some friends. He looked slightly familiar, but I hadn't met him before. He seemed friendly enough, and then he said my name and asked me if that was right. Now, I think I must have given him some kind of confused look because he followed up by saying, "Oh, I'm Jake and I work with Josh." And it's right then that I realized I recognized him from some photos on my husband's phone. And honestly, this is where things get a bit embarrassing. I'm a bit socially awkward, and so I struggled to end the conversation, but he just kept talking at me. And I guess he was already a couple beers deep, but while he was talking, he said something like, "It's great that you guys are still so close. I haven't talked to my brother in ages." And at the time, I was thinking to myself, what are you talking about? But I just assumed that he was drunk and not making any sense, so I ignored it. He started to get a little flirty, so I turned to my friends and we left shortly after that. I didn't say anything to them about it, and it didn't seem like a big deal to me. I also decided not to tell my husband that I had met his coworker Jake. Not to hide it, but because I figured the guy wouldn't even remember talking to me, and I didn't want to make it awkward for Josh at work by telling him his colleague tried to hit on me. So I just thought, no harm, no foul. But yesterday morning, I was out walking our dog Monty, and I was on my way to my regular cafe, which is in town. I was waiting in line to order, and the guy in front was an older man. He got his coffee and turned around, but stopped and looked at my dog and says, "Oh, hello, Monty." And Monty was super excited to see him apparently. And so I guessed that the guy was another colleague of Josh's, because Josh does bring the dog to work a couple of times a week. And to be honest, I thought it was sweet. So I smiled at him and I said hi. He introduced himself, and yes, I did guess correctly that he was a colleague, but then he said something like, "Aren't you a good sister walking his dog for him?" And I was so confused that I didn't even know how to react at first. So I stumbled on my words and I just said, "Oh, it's my dog." I do regret it, but I genuinely couldn't bring myself to correct him and say that I'm Josh's wife and not his sister. It was just too awkward, and I just wanted to leave because I think it was suddenly dawning on me what might have been going on. He asked me something about sharing a dog, but I was able to escape the conversation by being next in line to order my coffee, and he ended up leaving. So right now, I seriously don't know what to do, because seriously, what's happening? Do I even ask my husband about this? Part of me is just assuming or hoping that it's some kind of mistake, that he doesn't talk about me much at work, and they assume that we're related because we both have brown hair or something like that. But the thought that he has been telling his coworkers that I'm his sister makes my stomach churn. I don't even know how to broach the subject with him. So I really need some help. What would you guys do in this kind of situation? I've only told one friend what happened because it's so weird and embarrassing, and she has gone straight to thinking about how to plot his downfall. But I don't want to immediately assume the worst or ruin my marriage over something that could be nothing. What should I do? Before we go any further, the original poster actually has an update to this story. Here's what they had to say. Okay, for starters, I want to say thank you to everybody who commented and gave me some advice. I haven't read all of them, but I really appreciate the suggestions from everybody. In terms of a small update, Josh came home at about 2:30 last night, but he was drunk, so he just went straight to sleep, which is fine by me because having this conversation in that state just isn't going to happen. And at this point, I've just woken up, but he's still asleep. Now, the first thing I just want to clear up is that I've seen a lot of people suggesting that I have crippling social anxiety or I am severely introverted, which I suppose you could glean from the way I explain what happened, but I promise I'm not. I mean that I'm slightly introverted in that I'm not the most eager to meet lots of new people at once, especially a bunch of finance bros whose weekends consist of unending sports bar and plenty of beers, where I assume I would be mansplained about everything until my ears bleed. I suppose you could say that I'm confrontation adverse in that I'm quite laid back and prefer to keep a conversation easy and positive. I don't like it when things are awkward and correcting when people misrecognize me, so I guess it's one of those things, but I'm honestly not terrified of confrontation. Also, my husband and I do share some mutual friends. I didn't explain that well, but our lives are not entirely separate. The way he acts towards me around our mutual friends is extremely affectionate and normal, but it's only his work friends that I have never interacted with. I've also seen some people suggesting that what's going on is the equivalent to my husband being physically aggressive with me and me hopelessly wondering whether I should break up with him, or that I'm stupid for thinking my relationship was healthy when it clearly isn't. But seriously, I need people to cut me some slack. I'm a real person and this is an entirely alien and bizarre situation for me. My first reaction wasn't to assume the worst, but I do appreciate that all of you have made certain that this is a big deal. I guess I needed confirmation that the things that happened are enough proof that Josh has been purposefully lying and they weren't just mix-ups. I'm going to talk to him today and I'm going to ask him directly why he's telling his coworkers that I'm his sister. I follow the advice of writing my points down so that they don't get lost if I get emotional, and I will do my best to not let him slither out of it either, because I really hope he has some proof that his colleagues know that I'm his wife, because this scenario has seriously been stressing me out and I really just want to have it all completely resolved. Wow, that is a really bad situation to be stuck in, because what your husband is doing to you is completely intentional. Like, it doesn't take much for him to be like, oh yeah, this is my wife, this is someone I'm married to, and this is someone I care about. But instead, he's sitting there saying, oh yeah, this is my sister, and he's just lying to his coworkers for no real reason. And it really makes me question, like, why would he be acting this way? Is he like embarrassed about you or like in some way hiding you for some kind of reason? It honestly doesn't make any sense and there's just no good excuse. So hopefully this can all get worked out and you guys can figure out what's going on, because just like other people have been saying in your post, this really is a big deal and it needs to be figured out much sooner than later. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.